Well, hey, howdy, hi. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by to join me today. I really do appreciate it. My name is Ellie, and I'm a witch. And this over here is my teaching assistant, Andy. And today is day 3 of my False Fathers 4th of July series, where I'm talking about the Founding Fathers. And today I'm going to be talking about Aaron Burr. If you missed last two, I talked about George Washington and John Adams, who were the first and second presidents of the United States. Very famous. George Washington's great. John Adams exists. That's my opinion fully on that. But today I'm going to talk about Aaron Burr, who is very controversial, but almost like unanimously disliked to a degree. But yeah, let's just. I haven't been doing a lot of intro for these, so I'm just gonna start talking about Aaron Burr now. So I'll be honest when I say that I didn't see Hamilton the musical until like 8-ish months ago, and I don't particularly remember learning anything about Hamilton or Burr, and nothing about this infamous duel when I was in school at least. I thought Hamilton the musical was not bad. I'd probably watch again, but it did make me more curious about Hamilton and Burr. Both were deeply flawed people. But looking more into the founding fathers as a whole, there are so many people who think Burr is just the worst founding father ever. So going into this essentially blind, this is what I was able to find on him. So let's start by talking about the Manhattan Company, which was established in 1799. Now, the Manhattan Company is technically still around, yet far from its original plan. In 1955, it ended up merging with Chase Bank, becoming Chase Manhattan Bank, and then later formed JP Morgan Chase & Co. So as I said, very far from the original plan. The formation of the Manhattan Company was originally meant to help provide clean water to lower Manhattan. Now, the clean water was important to Alexander Hamilton, who had fears regarding yellow fever outbreaks as his own personal childhood trauma. And he proposed his clean water project, and there was a lot of support for it, including from Aaron Burr. However, while working on the legal drafting of the project, Burr managed to sneak in a clause allowing funds raised to be diverted for other purposes. Now, the proposal ended up passing, and with that, Burr and the other Democratic Republicans used funds to create a bank that catered to their party, thus undercutting the Federalist banks that Hamilton had established. Now, the company managed to raise about $2 million, $100,000 of which was put towards the Clean Water Project, and the rest was used to start the bank. As you might imagine, the clean water efforts truly suffered, using hollowed out tree trunks as pipes and digging wells in congested areas that led to sewage and water mixing. This led to multiple cholera epidemics, and it wasn't until 1842 that we finally seen clean water in New York, and no thanks to the Manhattan Company. As one might assume, this was enraging for those who cared about the Clean Water Project that was supposed to be happening, and one can understand how Hamilton may have been more than a little upset at Burr, whom he had trusted up until this point. We also, of course, have to talk about the election of 1800, and this was kind of a mess, but it was needed, and if it hadn't been a mess that year, it would have come up shortly afterwards. But before the 12th Amendment, the way that running for president was set up was not the same way that we see today. Now you have a presidential candidate that runs for each party, generally being Democratic or Republican, though there are technically other parties just aren't as popular. Those candidates run with a select vice president. Whichever party's presidential candidate wins the election, the vice president also wins, and that team goes into the White House. The original way was that 2 candidates for each party would run essentially separately. In this area, see the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists as the parties. So for the Federalists, you had John Adams and Charles Pinckney running, and for the Democratic Republicans, Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr were running. So all 4 ran for president, and it would be the runner-up that would become the vice president. The parties would agree to campaign as president and vice president, and in this case, Burr backed Jefferson and was intending to run as the vice president. Now, the results of the election actually ended in a tie for Jefferson and Burr, and as the votes didn't differentiate between president or vice president, the votes had to be redone with just the 2 candidates. This meant, though, that Burr and Jefferson were now rivals. Burr did outwardly support Jefferson, but was campaigning for the House of Representatives to vote him as president. After many days, the final vote came in and Jefferson was the winner. Jefferson obviously knew about the betrayal from Burr and gave him little to nothing to do as vice president during his presidency. And of course, we all know I obviously can't leave out the duel between Burr and Hamilton. Now, thanks to the musical, a lot of people incorrectly think that the duel was a direct result of Hamilton not endorsing Burr for the presidency. The reason is debatably much more petty. So basically, a man named Charles Cooper wrote a letter to Philip Schuyler, who was Hamilton's father-in-law, claiming that Hamilton has made comments at a dinner party regarding Burr. Now, Hamilton had supposedly expressed a despicable opinion of Burr. What was the opinion, you ask? No one knows. Not only do historians not actually know, but Burr didn't even know at the time. It could have been that Hamilton had witnessed Burr commit petty theft or seen him murder someone. Point being, Burr had no idea but was upset nonetheless. In all honesty, Hamilton had been talking a lot of shit about Burr, so even Hamilton at the time was not entirely sure what the specific comment was that had upset Burr. So Burr initially demanded a retraction of the comment. Hamilton refused on the grounds that no one could verify what the comment was, and the fact that he was opposed to retracting it based on the third party's opinion on the statement. And some people don't actually believe that Cooper heard it at the party, but rather in general knew Hamilton how he felt about Burr. Eventually, Burr went on to demand that Hamilton retract anything negative he had ever said about him. And again, Hamilton was against this. He knew that if he retracted every negative thing that he had said, he would essentially be endorsing Burr, and that may help him win the next election. So he denied it. At which point, Burr challenged him to a duel. Now, the duel in musical, they say everything's legal in New Jersey as they decide where the duel will be held. But dueling was illegal in New Jersey as well, but they chose to do it there because the punishment was less severe than in New York. So the day of the duel, they made their way from New York to New Jersey with their seconds, the point of the seconds being the ones who try to negotiate before gunfire, and the doctor. This part of history is not entirely clear, as there are conflicting accounts of what had happened. The number twos did not reach an agreement, and the duel was inevitable. The guns that were used belonged to neither Hamilton nor Burr, and so the presence of a hair trigger was not necessarily known to either party. The hair trigger was verified. We can't verify if either realized it was there. Hamilton chose the side of the field where he would be facing the sunrise, potentially obscuring his view. Obviously, shots were fired, and Hamilton ended up shot. Now, there were letters published that were supposedly from Hamilton stating that he would be firing into the air, throwing away his shot, though it is disputed as to whether that is true or if it was created after the shooting to frame Burr. Others believe that Hamilton had a death wish, as he had actually been in 12 or 13 duels before this one, and he knew that his death would ruin Burr's life. Some people think that he chose the side with the sunrise so he could watch it as he died. No matter what, Burr murdered Hamilton. Whether you agree that by agreeing to a duel mitigates the crime as you knew someone would die, doesn't change the fact that it is and was illegal to duel and is still considered murder. Burr never faced charges though. This was because he just avoided New York and New Jersey after the news of the duel and death came out. Burr just returned to being the vice president and never visited those states. For this next one, it is also disputed. Some historians call this a myth, and I don't agree with that for this instant. So, the Burr conspiracy. While he was still vice president, Burr made plans to take a portion of the Louisiana Purchase in order to create his own country in which he would be king. So Burr reached out to England to get support for the plan, asking for money and supplies for the endeavor. Now, his contact was Anthony Merry, who was on board and passed on the request. Now, when nothing happened, Burr once again reached out to Merry, claiming the Louisiana Purchase was going to secede from the United States. Now, this time Charles Fox, who was an American ally in England, did not think that sounded right and crushed any hopes of support from England. Burr, though, was not deterred, and instead began working with General James Wilkinson. Now, the two had become acquainted during the Revolutionary War, and there was a lot of speculations that Wilkinson was actually a spy for Spain. Now, after his vice presidency was over, Burr had more time to travel and amass supporters, which he actually managed to get quite a few. The major problem being that neither Spain nor England would be sending support. However, Spain did have tension with the US regarding the boundary line of the Louisiana Purchase. Burr believed that it would work in his favor. While vice president, Burr had managed to get Wilkinson appointed territorial governor of Louisiana. So when diplomatic efforts fell through, Burr thought that Jefferson would send Wilkinson with federal troops to Louisiana, and at that point, Burr and Wilkinson could use the troops to attack and take over Texas or part of Mexico under the guise of working for the United States. With this idea in mind, Burr sent a coded message to Wilkinson outlining the plan. This was referred to as the cipher letter and was a big part of the treason trial. Now, news reached Jefferson, and many people, including Wilkinson, wrote letters to the president giving him what they knew about the plan. Burr was brought in front of the grand jury, though they were unable to reach a verdict, so a judge called the case into court. Now, Burr feared that he would be indicted, so he fled into the wilderness, but he was captured. Now, his trial ended with an acquittal. Technically, the act of treason based on the Constitution requires an overt act of war, and as Burr had nothing but a promise of support and a general plan, he hadn't technically committed treason, and therefore couldn't be charged with it. Regardless of the outcome, he was still a ruined man following the trial. Now, after the trial, Burr began a self-imposed exile, where he moved to England for several years, though eventually he did return to the US. Now, his first wife, Theodosia, had died of cancer, and towards the end of his life, he married a wealthy widow who was about 20 years his junior. Now, he managed to squander away her wealth, and she applied for divorce. There's no need for me to include this part, other than the irony, of course. So, Burr's younger wife, her name was Eliza, which was Hamilton's wife's name, and she hired Alexander Hamilton Jr. to be her divorce attorney, and the divorce was finalized the day of Burr's death. So as I said, I essentially went to this blind. I hadn't heard anything about Burr in school, at least not that I could remember. Nothing that was important enough for me to remember, I guess. But yeah, it was really fascinating to learn all of that and the Burr conspiracy. That was wild. And just because you aren't charged with something didn't mean you didn't commit the crime. I will say that. So I believe it. It's just too many people were like, yeah, he's gonna commit treason, and then they just got him too early before he could commit treason. I don't know. This is just my opinion. I feel like he should have been charged. But yeah, so that was day 3 for the 4th of July, which is tomorrow for those of you who are unaware. I don't have a specific person to talk about. It was hard to find more than just like 1 or 2 overtly negative things because I didn't want to view it in a modern lens of slavery bad, because then it's like every founding father sucks, which I think is what I named tomorrow's episode. But so it was hard to find things aside from like our moral standings that made it a crime. So I'm going to talk about a few different people tomorrow and just a little bit into their misdeeds. But yeah, so that is tomorrow's video. I hope you liked this one. If you did, if you want a thumbs up, and please tell me if I missed anything or if you want to add anything to what I said, because this one was fascinating to research, especially because he's so sympathetic in the musical. He really is. The actor is amazing and he's written really well. So yeah, it was very sympathetic until I learned he's actually like a terrible human being. The more you know. But yeah, if you liked the video, thumbs up, and if you want to see more of us, then hit the subscribe button, maybe. And I need to start putting his Instagram. He has an Instagram. We just went on a trip to Virginia that I never even posted. I'm gonna post that now. So yeah, if you want to see his trip to Virginia, check out his Instagram, which will be somewhere on the screen. And hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.